Welcome to Views from the World Tree. On today's episode, we'll take a look at the history of the upcoming Veterans Day holiday, how it came to be, and what our feelings are on what it represents. And now, on with the show. For personal news this week, my wife and I got a new puppy, so that's fun. And along with it, all of the sleep deprivation and housebreaking frustration and all of that goes with it. So she's a border collie, which is the same as our 2-year-old dog that we have. Her name is Sky because she has sky blue eyes. And she's not the typical black and white border collie. She's either a lilac or a red merle. We kind of have to wait until she gets a little bit older to see if the reddish purple of her coat is going to stay just a solid color, or if it's going to get some red marbling in it. But anyway, so that's my personal news. Pretty exciting, but not really a whole lot to talk about. Maybe I'll put a picture up on the show notes.
The picture that you sent is adorable. I think I threatened to come and dog nap her. I didn't know border collies had purple in their coat. I've never actually been around one close enough. Is that common or?
It's not as common. The black and white is definitely the most common, and they call it lilac. It's more of like a purplish brown. But they always have white, and then that can be paired with black, blue, brown, red, or lilac, and then the blue, the red, and the lilac can also be what they call merle, which is like it's got different like tufts of like darker and lighter color. So, and they can be tricolor, so that you can have like black and white, and then it'll have brown like and around the borders between the colors. But
I did not realize border collies were like Appaloosa horses. That's really cool. The things you learn.
mm-hmm.
So how's training going? Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. They don't typically have blue eyes either. So, because our 2-year-old is kind of the typical. Well, she's a smooth coat, so she's not the typical, but she is the black and white with the kind of the almond eyes. Training is going well. She's really young. She's barely young enough to be separated from her mom. So we're just working on like name recognition and housebreaking right now. But she seems to be picking stuff up pretty quick. She is a border collie, so they're generally regarded as the most intelligent breed. So they can be really easy to train in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways they can also be difficult if you're not consistent and strict with your training regimen. They can kind of turn the tables on you and start to train you.
From what I understand, that's most dog breeds, though. But yeah, I'm excited for you. I'm excited to see how her and her new sister get along and how much of your house is still intact by the time I come out and visit during the summer. I guess I'll go into my news. So a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the book Rewilding, and I've been going through it. My biggest takeaway on that book so far is just this idea of being present, sitting and being present. The author talks a lot about sitting in nature, being present in nature. But I don't know. I don't have enough time right now to really sit in nature. I wake up before the sun rises and I get home after the sun sets. So it's hard to go sit and be present in nature when you have no light to really be present with. But another book that I started for my commutes, because I wanted to listen to this one when I could give it a little bit more thought process. So I picked up Paddle Your Own Canoe by Nick Offerman. If you watch Parks and Recreation, he's the actor that plays Ron Swanson. And he has a very dry and very sarcastic sense of humor. It definitely lightens my commute quite a bit. Today on my drive home, he was talking about epoxy bonding agents and going, hey, I bet we could huff this and get high with him and one of his buddies, and going, he said that they huffed it. They had about 30 seconds of like absolute amazing ecstasy, and then 30 minutes of one of the worst headaches that he's ever had. And he's like, yeah, that's how we found out that is not a good high. So just that, it's one of those books. So
Nice. I think I own that one on Audible, and I started listening to it. I don't remember if I finished it or not, but I do remember enjoying it.
yeah, he's funny. But one of the takeaways that I wanted to bring up is he suggests how everyone needs to find themselves a hobby where they use their hands, or a hobby where they create something. And he mentions things like cooking, drawing, woodworking. He is quite the accomplished woodworker and builds his own boats and like paddles and stuff, hence the name of the book. But I actually really enjoyed this idea because looking back at my life, I've had many hobbies, a lot of them involving computer games and whatnot, and I have found that nothing is more fulfilling, at least for me, than when I have something tangible from my hobby. I can go to the gym and I get the runner's high and all of that stuff, and I feel really good. But I mean, your body changes with the seasons. It's not tangible. When I complete a painting, or when I, at the end of a harvest, when I pick all of my vegetables that I planted back in March and have like nurtured for an entire year, that's when I actually feel like this feeling of accomplishment with my hobbies. And so I thought it was interesting that he mentioned it. I mean, this guy that's talking about chasing the next greatest high is also talking about the rooting power of hobbies where you have tangible creations out of it. So I really like that, and that really resonated with me. So
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. And I don't think I mentioned this to you, but this last week, I decided that I wanted to, excuse me, that I wanted to refinish the dresser that goes in our bedroom. So we have this dresser that is made from, it's either pine or ash. I can't tell for sure. I think it's pine because it's a little bit more yellow, but it was painted white. And when we've moved into this new house and been buying furniture, we've kind of gone for more of like I guess you would call it the farm look of like wood grain that's been stained and made to look rustic. So I took the dresser out in the garage, and I've been, sanding and stripping the paint off and getting ready to refinish it. And just as kind of a for fun thing, I decided I didn't want to use like power tools. So I've been working on it with a hand planer, like an old school. Um, I'm sure our listeners know what it is. It's got two handles on it, and you like slide it across the wood, and it's got a blade on it that scrapes off and smooths the wood. And then also just sandpaper by hand. And it's taken a long time, but I've just been kind of working on it in my spare time. And I think the author of the book is right. It's very I don't know. You can do a lot of thinking, and it's kind of gratifying to see the work progress.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think he's onto something.
So, when are you going to make your own canoe?
Probably never. I don't have the time, patience, or energy to learn that type of craft. But I have been thinking about getting a wood lathe, possibly, and maybe
Nice.
redoing like little, not doing full table legs, but doing just little things to kind of practice with it, and like you,
Hmm.
refinishing dressers or things like that. So just adding my own flair, getting rid of the IKEA
Nice.
stuff and putting in the Steve stuff.
Yeah, as useful as it's been, my wife and I are getting rid of our IKEA furniture too.
Yeah.
So, except for our game room shelves, it's hard to find a more efficient board game storage than their big grid shelves. So,
Well, that's fun. Yeah, we've been talking about doing open shelving, so getting some planks of wood and putting in the brackets and staining the wood, kind of like the farmhouse look, and using an open shelving concept for the books and whatnot. I'm not quite sold, but I don't know. I like the idea. I just don't like the idea of doing it in every single room and every single nook and cranny. I feel like it might get busy. And if you finally listen to one of these podcasts, I'm sorry, honey, that I didn't bring it up with you first before I sold it to the world.
I'm sure she'll forgive you.
Yes, I see. Good news, everyone!
I should probably move on to current events. So, I, for this week, have a couple of things that I encountered in kind of news and TV habits that fit pretty well together. So I was perusing. There's a subreddit called Uplifting News that I was perusing, and came across a headline that a critically endangered bird that was believed to be extinct has been spotted alive on the Hawaiian Islands. So the bird is called the kiwikiu, also known as the Maui parrotbill, and it was thought to have gone extinct about a year and a half ago. But just recently, it's been spotted on the slopes of a Maui volcano. So it's always good to hear that a species that we thought had died out is sticking around for a little bit longer. And that kind of ties in with a documentary that my wife and I watched a few nights ago called A Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough. And this one, so this is the guy that does a lot of the nature documentaries. Um, and as soon as you hear his voice, you'll recognize him. But this one was a little bit different. He described it as what he called his witness statement to the world. He talks about the effects of climate change and habitat destruction and monoculture, agriculture, and the effects of that on the world that he's actually personally seen just in his lifetime because he's visited all these places around the world, some of them multiple times, and he talked about how like he's been up in the Arctic Circle and just recently going up there and places that were completely inaccessible because they were covered by ice are now just open water. um, so it's kind of interesting to see it from the perspective of just a person that has been alive long enough and been doing these documentaries long enough that he's seen the actual effects on the world. Which it, it sounds depressing. I promise it's not. It kind of gets depressing in the middle there, but he brings it full circle. He has some good suggestions on what we as humans can do to help reverse our effect on the planet. Um, and that brings me into my last headline, which was a video that I saw talking about how the Orkney Isles off the coast of Scotland have too much renewable energy. This goes back to something we talked about a few weeks ago about the energy storage problem that's associated with like solar and wind power. And so the Scots, and particularly off the northern and northwestern coast, have kind of been pioneers in renewable energy for quite a while. They have like tidal energy and wind energy, not so much solar because it's pretty cloudy and stormy, but they have so much excess power generation on this island that um, and they can't dump enough power back to the mainland. The infrastructure isn't there to support it, so they've started using the excess electricity to split water atoms from seawater and generate hydrogen to fuel like cargo ships and ferries, which was pretty interesting to me. I don't know. I know you like climate science and stuff.
I was gonna say, I feel like all three of your current events, I feel like I've started to rub off on you in a weird way.
Yeah, which is weird because I mean I grew up in a coal mining town, so
Yeah,
but
my grandfather died of black lung, so I, we have roots in the same mines.
yeah.
Yeah, the parrot thing. When you shared that story with me, it got me to look it up because I'd never heard of this bird, and so during our pre-show, I was like, "Oh, did you know this? Did you know this?" And I was just throwing all these facts, which is kind of fun. I always look forward to your current events because you find great ones. But that that mission statement documentary sounds phenomenal. I think I might have to watch that.
And it's on Netflix, so
Okay, yeah, I'll have to watch it. And the renewable energy, like we were talking about, the biggest problem with renewable energy is you can't store it. Non-renewable sources, your oils, gases, and coals, are still king because you can run those in the middle of a blizzard. You can run those at night. You can run those whenever. But I do like the idea of creating hydrogen out of the excess energy, which in a weird way, it kind of makes you go, okay, I mean, that's a form of storing the energy, right?
true. Yeah, it's not terribly efficient, and they admitted that in the video, but they were like, I mean, it's either that or we like shut down the wind turbines and stuff, and that's even less efficient. So
Yeah, that's hard. I don't even know what I would use excess energy for. You can't put it in batteries because, I mean, the heavy metal mining to create batteries is just as environmentally devastating as gas.
yeah, smarter people than me will have to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, I do find it funny that you chose three things involving climate change because I found for my current event, surprise, surprise, a a paper or a journal from the University of Leeds that talked about extreme ice melting in Greenland. Um, and so, one of the sites that I go on at least once a week is Science Daily, which has an overview, a bunch of abstracts of what has been released in scientific journals throughout the week. And so if you're into health and nutrition, you can go find articles in regards to that, or biology or climate change or anything like that. On their main page, I found a study from this University of Leeds that was published on November the 1st, so not too long ago from the recording date of this. And they have been studying glacial melt in Greenland over the last 10 years. And they have found through satellite imagery, sampling, and all of that, that 3.5 trillion tons of ice has melted from the island of Greenland into the oceans. And that's staggering. I don't know what that would be in gallons, but they said that it was enough to cover the area the size of Manhattan with 4.5 kilometers deep of water, which is almost 3 miles for people who use the imperial system. So
Wow.
that's taller than any skyscraper. It would completely cover the city of Manhattan in New York, or New York City, the island of Manhattan, I should say.
That's crazy. Yeah. How many millions of people live on that island? Quite a
Right.
few, I think. So yeah, I spent some time there. That's pretty crazy to me because I mean I can visualize it. So anyway,
It was staggering, absolutely staggering. They said that this 3.5 trillion tons of ice that's melted off of Greenland has raised the global sea level by 1 centimeter, or approximately half an inch. That doesn't seem like a big deal. I mean, there's a lot of coastline, but half an inch less of coastline everywhere. Basically, coastal areas are more susceptible to flooding. Hurricanes have more time to gain power.
Mm-hmm.
All of that. It's kind of a scary look. And then the models the computer models that they developed from the study found that glacial runoff from Greenland is likely to contribute 3 to 23 centimeters more water, sea level rise of 3 to 23 centimeters more, or approximately 1 inch to 9 inches more water in the oceans by the year 2100.
That's crazy. And I mean that's just talking sea levels, right? That's not going into all of the things with water temperatures and coral reef die-offs and ocean acidity and all the impacts of that.
Yeah, it was eye opening. I know it's just one study, and you can't put all your eggs in the basket type of thing. I mean, it's one study that found this in the northern hemisphere. Who's to say that there's not a study down in Antarctica that's saying, oh well, this is warming in the north. We've got sea ice growth in the south. I don't know. But I can say over the summer I spent a week in Malibu, and I'm starting to see the effects of these water level rises on our coasts. The house that we stayed at had a stairwell from the back door down to the beach. And when I was getting the codes and everything from the homeowner so that we could lock up and have access to the property, he was telling me that when he bought the house, there were 6 stairs that went down to beach level. And now there was half a stair that went down. The sand is half a stair from the thing. You can see it with trees. I don't know people that live on the coast have probably seen salt poisoning. You growing up in one of the most salinated deserts in America have seen the effects of salt poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
So they're seeing it in trees that are getting salt water in their water table. And the one thing that really blew me away during high tide, we were there for a full moon, which is the highest tide. And during the full moon, the water was up against the mountainside. Like, it was completely underneath the house. The house is built on stilts. It's supposed to go under the house, but like completely under the house, up against the concrete foundation.
Wow.
Which I'm not sure people really want.
Probably not.
I could be wrong, but yeah. So that was my current event. Not to bring everybody down, but I thought it was interesting that you watched this documentary about, I can't remember his name. I always have a hard time with his name.
Attenborough?
Yeah. Attenborough traveling to places and then traveling back and seeing the effects of climate change. And I'm going, yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, he said, so he started doing it when he was in his 20s. And I want to say in the documentary, he said that he's like 93 years old now.
Yeah, man.
Which just blew my mind. I mean, the guy is, he's, pretty sharp for a 93-year-old dude. But
it's got to have something to do with climbing mountains and everything for 50 years of your life.
yeah. Yep.
Anyway, now that we've brought everybody down, way down, I'm feeling pretty miserable about their life on this planet. Let's talk about something uplifting, like how we honor our veterans of soldiers. Our main topic this week is going to be all about Veterans Day.
Some history of the Veterans Day holiday. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, a treaty was signed that ended World War I. This Armistice Day was supposed to end the war that would end all wars.
We celebrated this until 1954, when President Eisenhower changed the holiday's name to honor all veterans of all wars, because we did fight another war, and many more, actually, beyond that. So,
yeah, so from 1954 to 1975, the holiday was celebrated as Veterans Day. It was moved, however, to the second Monday in November because banks preferred to close on a Monday rather than in the middle of the week. But eventually it was moved back to Armistice Day.
Today it's celebrated through most of the Allied nations that fought in World War I. Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, and other British Commonwealths celebrate Remembrance Day, and that's usually celebrated over the weekend leading up to the actual Armistice Day. France still celebrates it on Armistice Day itself, as does the United States now.
In the United States and other parts of the world, many churches commemorate the day by ringing their church bells 21 times, starting at 11 o'clock on November the 11th. Why 21? It comes from the 21 gun salute, which originated in the 14th century when warships would fire their munitions into the sea to show that they had no hostility. British warships of the period had 7 cannons on their decks, and 21 came from the fact that a naval base could fire 3 shots for every 1 fired from the ocean. Also, possibly has some history in the biblical meaning with the sacredness of the numbers 7 and 3 throughout the Bible.
In the United States, there are 18.2 million living veterans. 9% of these veterans identify as female. There are 7 million who served during the Vietnam War, 3 million who served during the War on Terrorism, there were still 325,000 World War II veterans that were still living as of 2020 when this article that I found was written. 2 million served during the Korean War, and Virginia, Wyoming, and Alaska have the highest percentage of veterans in their population.
Interesting. So now we just wanted to go through some of our own thoughts about the holiday. I guess I'll go first. Veterans Day has always been an important holiday to me. There hasn't really been a question of whether it should be observed or not. I have quite a few people in my family that have served throughout the wars and different conflicts throughout history. And it was always just, something that we did. But even now, looking back, I think it's important to recognize the service of veterans, regardless of when they served or what their specific responsibilities were. I don't want to monologue for too long here, so I'll let you share some of your thoughts, and then if that spawns something, I'll jump back in.
That's fair. If you haven't picked up on it yet, Adam and I are cousins, and so we probably hold this holiday a little bit higher than others for the same reason. I don't want to give too much family history away or anything like that, but I will say that my brother is a veteran, my grandfather is a veteran, and many other cousins, great grandparents, relatives, going all the way back to the American Revolution and beyond. I mean, Eisenhower said it's a way to honor all our veterans. I know Memorial Day is to honor the dead instead of just the living, but I don't know. I'm very thankful for the sacrifices that everybody that has ever served has done. I can't think of anything negative about this holiday. I think it's important to honor these folks and the sacrifice that they've made.
Yeah, echoing what you said. So obviously we share some family members that served. I also have family members on the side that we don't share that served. My paternal grandfather served in the Navy during the Korean War. And then more recently, my little brother is currently going through Air Force ROTC in preparation for the JAG Corps. He's studying law, which I mean, I guess that's kind of obvious, right? What else would you be studying if you were going into JAG? But and then I myself also did Air Force ROTC, albeit that was about 15 years ago. And then I transitioned into the reserve for the rest of my time commitment. And numerous other cousins, extended family, both on our mutual side of the family tree and on the other, have served at one time or another. So there's definitely a lot of family involvement with the military, and I think that kind of comes back to just the way that we were raised. That being, you help others when you get the opportunity, and both sides of my family came from fairly like labor intensive blue collar backgrounds. So I grew up in a mining town. My other grandfather, grew up ranching, and so everybody throughout my family has had to work for everything that they have, and so I guess maybe the preclusion for military service comes back to the desire to defend what you have because you've had to work for it. And not insinuating that other people that are successful haven't had to work for it. Just stating my opinion on maybe why it's a factor.
I think it's important to honor people. I do mirror fighting for what you have, but there's also like this this importance of fighting to defend those who can't. And I know in today's society, especially, there's a lot of people that are very anti-military, anti-wars, blaming a lot. And I don't want to get onto the political side, but no matter where you stand on the spectrum of politics or how you feel about the wars, it's important to remember that wars aren't fought by the people making the decisions to go to war. They're fought by the people that are working, the hard workers that are looking for a way to support their family or support their neighborhood or community. And sometimes it's really hard to remember that and not put blame where blame should not be put.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we try to stay positive on this podcast, so we probably won't get into kind of cancel culture and my feelings on it. I do politically stay, pretty close to the center on pretty much all topics, but I think the important thing to remember is what you said. The people that we're recognizing and the service that we're honoring as part of this holiday are not the politicians and the lawmakers that make the decisions to go to war. Recently, the U.S. withdrew from Afghanistan, and there was a lot of hate directed at veterans of that conflict, and that did not sit well with me. I called out a lot of people on it. Regardless of the morality of the conflict in general, and the only thing I'll say there is I think that withdrawing was the correct thing to do. I think it could have been handled better, but you can still support the people that served. And I know that we're talking about Veterans Day, not Memorial Day. And so we're talking about supporting those who are still living. But keep in mind that many of those people lost individuals that were very close to them. And they have to live with that survivor's guilt every day by, berating them over the morality of a war that they really didn't have any control over is just making it that much harder for them to live with the things that they saw, the things that they had to do, and with the memory of their brothers and sisters that didn't make it home. You look at statistics about some of the things that veterans face with homelessness and joblessness, and the fact that still today there are an average of 22 veterans that commit suicide every day. People that haven't seen war and haven't been through that conflict, it's not possible to understand. So just, be kind. If you don't want to tell somebody thank you for your service, that's fine. You don't have to. But doesn't mean you can't recognize that they've been through something difficult and be supportive.
Well said. I think that'll bring us to our mindfulness moment, because I think that's a great way to end that segment. Just be kind. Basically the same thing we say every week. Be kind.
For the mindfulness moment this week, we were trying to find something like we usually do that fits with the topic at hand. And we threw a couple of ideas around and we settled on a song from Les Mis that's called Empty Chairs at Empty Tables. I feel like it fits pretty good with the topic, so I'm just going to read through it. Empty chairs at empty tables. There's a grief that can't be spoken. There's a pain that goes on and on. Empty chairs at empty tables. Now my friends are dead and gone. Here they talked of revolution. Here it was they lit the flame. Here they sang about tomorrow, and tomorrow never came. From the table in the corner, they could see a world reborn, and they rose with voices ringing, and I can hear them now. The very words that they had sung became their last communion on this lonely barricade at dawn. Oh, my friends, forgive me that I live and you are gone. There's a grief that can't be spoken. There's a pain goes on and on. Phantom faces at the window, phantom shadows on the floor, empty chairs at empty tables, where my friends will meet no more. Oh, my friends, don't ask me what your sacrifice was for. Empty chairs at empty tables, where my friends will sing no more.
I know normally we kind of discuss the meaning at the end of the mindfulness moment, but what's more mindful than just letting those lyrics fade out into silence? So thank you for listening to this week's episode. You can join us next week as we lighten things up just a little bit and talk, go back to our conspiracy theories and speculate on whether we are just in one giant Sims game or the Matrix, or possibly part of the singularity. Join us next week. Bye. Do you have a request for a subject that you'd like us to talk about on a future episode? Or is there a particular topic for which you have a passion and you'd love to come on the show as a guest? Either way, send an email to podcast@viewsfromtheworldtree.com or message us through any of our social media accounts, the links to which can be found on our new website, viewsfromtheworldtree.com. We look forward to hearing from you. If you have a moment, we would also appreciate if you could leave us a rating on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. It makes a huge difference, especially for newer podcasts.